Hi. So my name is Keanu Parton, and sorry for the bad camera quality. It's all that I had, but I think it works. So um, in this video, I will be explaining just briefly what nihilism is, and then after that, I'll be talking about my personal thoughts on its practicality in real life, and then after practicality, just how it would look in in someone's actual life, applied, because obviously when talking philosophy and whatnot, in theory it's much different than on paper and how it would look in real life. So yeah, and I think that's some interesting discussions that to be had about it, and I'm gonna share my thoughts, and maybe if you see this, you can share your thoughts or something, or disagree with me, that all that fun stuff. So um I guess first I should describe what nihilism is for people who don't know. Um, and obviously, call me out if I'm wrong, but the way I've seen it described, me personally, is in simple terms, it's either the belief in nothing or the disbelief in something, right? Because while most people talk about nihilism, when most people talk about nihilism, they're talking about a certain, I guess, branch of nihilism. And the most common one is existential nihilism, where you believe that we're born into a meaningless world and it's pointless to find meaning, right? But that's only one branch of the whole tree, because let's say for existential nihilism, what I just described, it'd be you're disbelieving in meaning. You disbelieve in us as humans having meaning and should be searching for meaning. And I'll explain upon how, while that may seem depressing, it can be seen sort of as optimistic if you look at it at the right perspective. But I think it's important when practicing nihilism that it's important to note they're always almost practicing a specific version of nihilism and not just nihilism, unless you're like a true full nihilist and just hate everything. Not hate everything, sorry, but don't believe in everything, and that we're just there's no point in living in all of that. So to further explain nihilism, let's say I'm a moral nihilist, then I don't believe in morals. I think that I am perhaps above them, or they do not exist. And like realistically, it's kind of realistically, it's just kind of seems kind of just so extreme and impractical, because I feel like most of the time when talking about different branches of nihilism, it kind of just goes against being human, and it takes, in my personal opinion, a really specific kind of person to be able to be an actual nihilist and not feel awful about it. Because if I'm doing things that most would consider unethical, unmoral, you should never do that. The most likely chance is that I'm also going to believe in that, and when doing it, I'm going to feel like an awful person. I'm going to be overwhelmed with guilt. Like, like what happened. I briefly read. Don't ask me too many questions about it, but I briefly read Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Butchered his name, but essentially, main character Rodion, I think is how you pronounce it, is he he starts to believe he's already in an awful mental state, but then at some point he believes that he is not an ordinary man and that he's above morals and doesn't have to abide by them. So then he ends up killing somebody, and then accidentally ends up killing two people in total. And this turned out to be an absolutely awful idea. It did not help anybody. He felt like he was already in a mental pit, and then just that action just dug it even deeper. And it was just awful for him. And that's like the main example where in most cases when talking about nihilism, everybody wards against it. Like back in like when it was first like termed and coined, it was almost used as like a derogatory term, saying like you call someone a nihilist or you call something like nihilism and it's like the worst thing you could ever resort to and you should never do it ever. And then if nihilism, like it seems so impractical and in somebody's life, the only way that I could see it being like a semi good thing where you could be like a normal human is through is like optimistic existential nihilism. And to build upon that, optimistic nihilism obviously is looking at the optimism, right? So essentially it's, yeah, we're born in a meaningless world and it's pointless to find meaning. So because of that, I just shouldn't care and I should live how I want to live my life. I should be happy. I should do what I want to do and do what makes me happy and not care about anything. And when you think about it like that, it can be a little bit dangerous depending on the person, right? But if you just want to be happy, help other people, then it's really freeing because unlike other philosophies like existentialism, where perhaps or absurdism, where perhaps well, absurdism is a little bit off because it's like the love child of existentialism and nihilism. That's a different conversation though. But unlike existentialism, it's like while it might seem like we were born and then it's up to us to find our meaning. That does seem really happy. But then what if you don't find your meaning? Because a lot of people don't. They have no idea what they want to do with their lives. They have no idea what their purpose was being born on this earth, and they don't know how to find it. And that can be kind of detrimental to someone's mental health, not knowing what you want to do with your entire life. Like that can really suck and be sort of a burden. What was supposed to be freeing and helpful can be somewhat of a burden. And that's why nihilism can be seen as a good thing because we're completely free from any like goals or objectives aside from just living how we would like to live. And that's the best way I can see nihilism. Because, like me personally, I'd consider myself an absurdist. Um, I'm gonna make another video on that, but essentially it's like we accept that we're born into a meaningless world and we accept this and then just find meaning in our own lives and doing what we enjoy. That's like in like simple terms. And from like that standpoint, I can't imagine being like any other kind of nihilist, except I can see optimistic nihilist because it seems quite like it's a nice thought and perspective, and you could be really happy doing that. But anything else, I'd feel like an awful person. Like I'm a pretty emotional person. Well, like inside, like I feel emotions, right? Obviously, some people don't, but I feel. Like if I did something most people consider awful, I'd feel awful and I wouldn't be able to live with myself. But it keeps building up and building up and building up, like Rodion and Crown and Punishment. Like I just wouldn't be able to do that. And considering all this, then it's really interesting how nihilism, like in mainstream media, has been growing more popular in today's society and specifically the younger generation, with things like declining religious beliefs, the global crises happening, economic uncertainty, and just the general influence of social media is actually making nihilism have like a return in popularity and in like people noticing it, which is really interesting because of how like depressing it might seem. And while you're like, oh, maybe everybody's just like adapting optimistic nihilism, that's like not the case. They're actually like adapting the like what most would consider the depressing like nihilistic perspective of the world. And I think that this most like commonly is seen because of mental health and people don't know what to do. Their mental health is awful, so then they say they're a nihilist. When when really when really when really I think that they aren't nihilists and that they're just going through a shitty period in their life, pardon my language. And then want to find something that they can confide in, and nihilism is that. It's sort of like um, let's say like a bus stop. Like let's say it's raining, you have an umbrella, right? So you run into like a phone booth or something to shelter from the rain. It's kind of like that, where you sound nihilism like, huh, that's really relatable to like what I'm going through right now because I'm not happy. So I'm gonna consider myself a nihilist, and then when I do become happy, if that happens, right? Because if you are like, let's say, depressed and not in a good mental state, and then you take shelter in something that's even more depressing if you don't look at it in the right way, it can lead to just like a downward spiral. But then let's say you do become happy again and you realize, hey, I want to do something with this in my life, right? Then you can exit nihilism and then go be like an existentialist or something or an absurdist. And I think that's really interesting how it's not like, because I feel like, well, philosophy, obviously big talks still happens, whole community about it, but it's being more like, oh, like it's getting more publicity from mainstream media. But I think we see it time and time again where people don't like fully research what they're talking about, and they kind of just coin the term. like like with I'll make another video on stoicism, but it's kind of like that, where people say, yeah, I want to be a stoicism. But then when you like search up stoicism online, it's just like these like stupid, crappy AI videos of like top 10 like stoic quotes to get you through your gym workout or something. And it's not like going in like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, or like seeing the true like structure of stoicism and how it should be used to make your life happier. And then there's the whole other part of like the ancient versions of these philosophies, like ancient stoicism's way different. There's like a whole different thing to it, a whole like system of thinking. And ancient nihilism, I guess not ancient like not like back in the day, but it's like ancient nihilism is can be considered like, how do I put this? Oh, it's like nihilism now is like the meaning, but like before, nihilism, like ancient nihilism was kind of like, yeah, but what I said before, it's a derogatory term, and you like never, it's like something you never want to do. And I guess um going back on like my not nihilism with like the general world, and I think that it's actually interesting how like uh I guess sort of you can kind of see like, maybe I'm not too versed in this. I just like saw this term used, intellectualism, sorry, compared with nihilism. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you can see what's happening in today's day and age as like a disbelief in intellect and like medical knowledge. How we have like all these like health gurus on social media platforms just or advertising like health hacks or cures, and they're being popularized, and everybody's picking them up and be like, oh my God, I should do this, when it doesn't help your body like at all. And obviously, that doesn't help the medical community, but also you can see that as a form of nihilism. We're disbelieving in like knowledge and thinking that we can just, and just being like, I see this, it is good, I use because it has to work because they say it work. Um, yeah, what else do I want to talk about? I think, um, while nihilism might seem depressing, it definitely, you can definitely take away some like positive aspects from it, because I think the whole point of philosophy is that most of the time you're not going to just deadline follow one philosophy. Oh, sorry, before I get into that, just an interesting thing. Um, I think it was Diogenes the cynic, right? How there was the guy who would like urinate in public, he'd masturbate in public, like all that. He lived in like a vase. That guy, like in ancient Greece, I think. Don't quote me on that. I find it really interesting how it's like cynicism, but you can see that as social nihilism because he didn't believe in social conventions and standards. He just did what he wanted. And it's like really interesting how you can just like see things and then be like, oh, I can call that blank nihilism because cynicism is like a disbelief in sociality. I don't know how to put that into words. Like social rules, I guess, and standards. It's really interesting. What was I talking about before? Oh, like because I think the goal of philosophy is that we should look at things that we think are good and then um like look at things that we agree with and then take that and apply it to our life. We should like look at all these different philosophies and then we shouldn't just like be like, do I want today do I want to be a nihilist? Do I want to be a nihilist, absurdist, or existentialist? You don't have to pick one. You can take from all of them and make and just have your own personal set of values custom to how you live your life and what you think and like your own personal opinions and thoughts. And then so you can pick some from nihilism, take one from absurdism, take some from stoicism, and then combine them into this like hybrid philosophy, your own hybrid philosophy that you can live your happiest life with. And I think that's the best way nihilism should be treated. You shouldn't be a full nihilist or be like the bad ones unless it fits with your ideals. You should take optimistic nihilist and take that into consideration because it seems really useful. Or existential nihilism and then be like and then make a positive spin on it. You should do that because that's the best way that we can take things from philosophy and actually make use of it because talking theory is much different from actually doing it, like applying it to our own lives. And that's the happiest someone can live. Um, and that's probably all that I had to say about nihilism. I just wanted to spew my thoughts on that. It's a really interesting discuss just because how many like sub branches there are and how I guess one thing is it's really interesting how much of a fine line keeps different philosophies like in their own difference because like with optimistic nihilism, for example, like if you get too into it, optimistic nihilism is pretty much just absurdism. Because because if you're accepting you're in a meaningless world and if you're accepting like the conflict between humanity's search for meaning and then the inherent meaningless world, which is also just accepting that it's pointless to find meaning and we should not search for it, yet I still do, and that is therefore absurd, right? Interesting little tidbit, I guess. So that's all I had for nihilism. So if you see this, I hope maybe you can do some research on nihilism and take some um inspiration and apply it to your own life or something like that. Um or maybe if you want to disagree with me and I said something wrong, point it out in like the comments or something, or just add your own thoughts in that. So yeah. Thank you for listening and bye.